Welcome everybody to the April reading series presented by the Sundress Academy for the Arts. I'm Stacy Estep. I'm the reading series coordinator. And for anybody who doesn't know, Sundress Academy for the Arts, or SAFTA, is a writer's residency and arts collective that hosts workshops, retreats, and residencies for writers in all genres, including poetry, fiction, nonfiction, journalism, academic writing, playwriting, and more. And you can find out more at Sundress Academy for the Arts.com. We want to give a big thank you to the Tennessee Arts Commission for a grant which has made paying our readers tonight possible. And now, before we get started with the readings, I'm going to introduce our Community Outreach Director, Arlen Dunn, who will tell us about this month's community partner. Arlen?
Hi, can you all give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? All right. So our community partner for April is Girl Talk, and Girl Talk was founded by Denitra Moore as a nonprofit that serves to empower girls through social change and program development and to reduce barriers through meaningful mentoring programs. In the chat for Zoom, there's some links to find out more about Girl Talk, as well as the links that you can go to donate if you're able. And tonight we have the pleasure of having Abby Gibbons, who's the outreach and volunteer coordinator, to represent Girl Talk. Abby moved from North Carolina to Knoxville in 2012, where she graduated from Johnson University in 2016 with a dual degree in human services and biblical studies with a concentration on community with family. She currently lives in East Knoxville and attends Hope Fellowship Church. She is passionate about welcoming everyone, connecting strengths to needs, and to striving to make the world a brighter place. She enjoys playing competitive games, baking, and talking about personality types. Abby joined the Girl Talk team in January 2018 and looks forward to helping girls be their best selves and instilling confidence that will last a lifetime. Abby, I'd like to invite you to share more about Girl Talk and how people can get involved.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm going to see if technology likes me today and try to share my screen. I have a little PowerPoint for you guys. I love pictures, so it's always more fun when you get to see pictures of our amazing girls. Can you all see my screen? Okay, perfect. So I have been with Girl Talk since 2018, and this is a little very brief presentation that shares a little bit more about our organization. We are located in Knoxville, Tennessee, and so we just serve girls in the Knoxville area. This is our team. So right in the middle, you'll see that's Denitra Moore. She's the one that founded Girl Talk. And how Girl Talk started, we've been around for 15 years now. So we started in 2006. And how the organization began, it began through her story. So as a young girl, Denitra struggled with low self-esteem and low self-confidence and looked for worth in a lot of other ways. And she actually ended up getting pregnant her freshman year of college. And so she had her daughter and really had a lot of people that rallied around her to support her and for her to find her passion in life. And so she figured out that her passion was to help other girls have a safe space to talk about what was going on in their lives, their struggles, just what was on their heart. And so she started Girl Talk, and she had finished college, and she literally Googled how to start a nonprofit. And so here we are today, 15 years later. So this is the rest of the team. You'll see everybody. We have 4 program staff, and then we have Dee Dee, and we have a marketing and development director as well, and an office manager. So this is our mission, is that we exist to empower our girls to become their best selves by reducing the likelihood of teen pregnancy and helping our girls to advance educationally. Our vision is that we want to be and create a mutually beneficial community in which women and girls come together in a safe environment to share hope, grace, support, love, and experiences. So we believe that we are better and stronger when we can do life together and do life in community. And so that's what we are all about at Girl Talk. We have 3 different programs that we currently run, and this is like a really brief roadmap, but our school-based program, excuse me, our school-based program works with elementary and middle school girls, and it's a group mentoring model. And so we pair mentors to go into schools or into after-school programs and lead groups with girls. And so we focus on building confidence and self-esteem. We talk about goals. We talk about healthy relationships. This year, with everything going on with the pandemic, we've been talking a lot about emotions and how do we cope with our emotions. And so it's very hands-on, very practical lessons and sessions for the girls to be successful in the here and now. And then our next program is our one-to-one mentoring program and signature events. And so this program works with girls in middle school and high school, and each girl is matched with a mentor, an extra person in their life that cares about them, and that's an extra support. And one thing that's really cool about our one-to-one mentoring program is that we offer signature events for the girls. And so we actually get to take them on college and career tours every year. We do sleepovers with the girls, where we have curriculum-based sleepovers and just provide them a space for them to be and to talk about what's going on in their life. We do a fashion show every year, so the girls get to model in the fashion show. And we do a couple other events that the girls get to be involved in. So while each girl has a mentor, they're also a part of a bigger community, and they get to build positive peer relationships with other girls in the program, which is really, really beautiful to see. Our third program is called the Girl Talk Life Prep Academy, and it's for sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and it's all about preparing the girls for life after high school. So all the things that life had to teach us, or maybe is still teaching us, we want our girls to have a step ahead for them to be able to handle those things with grace and confidence. And so they come and we have monthly sessions and have different speakers that come and talk to the girls about the process of going to college if they want to go to college. They talk about managing money, and they even get to go through the process of what does it look like to sign a lease for an apartment, or to get their first job. And so it's a really, really awesome program. It's small. The girls are able to get a lot of one-on-one attention and support. And then our last program that we are currently expanding to is the Higher Education Initiative. And so previously we weren't able to really support girls once they graduated high school, but we've seen a need of the girls needing help with that transition into college or whatever's next for them in life. And so girls can enroll in the Higher Education Initiative, and they have extra support from program staff, and just have someone checking in on them and their mental health and how they're doing in school, and seeing if they need any extra resources. And so that is our last program. And I really briefly, I don't have a lot of time, but really briefly, I'll share with you guys our impact. And so one thing that we look at is our teen pregnancy rate. And so last year we were able to report that we had a 0% teen pregnancy rate. So none of the girls in our program got pregnant. And then we also look at graduation rate. So are girls graduating on time, and are they going on to post-secondary education? And so last year, 100% of our girls graduated on time, even in the middle of the pandemic, and all of them went on to post-secondary. And so we're super, super proud of them. And we know it wasn't an easy year to reach those goals and to move forward. And so we are very, very happy and proud of them. So that is all I have. That's a really, really brief snapshot of Girl Talk. Thank you guys for having me. If you have any questions, I'll put my email in the chat box. And you can also look at our website as well to get some more information. But if you guys have any questions after this, feel free to email me, or you can email, or you can also follow us on social media as well.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abby and Arlen. All right, we'll go ahead and introduce our first reader. Nepal-born Anuja Gamirae writes poetry, flash fiction, and creative nonfiction. She is the author of Kathmandu from Unsolicited Press and 2 poetry books in Nepali. A Best of the Net and Pushcart nominee, she works as a senior publisher in an online learning company. She reads poetry for Up the Staircase Quarterly and enjoys teaching poetry to children in summer camps. Her work found home in print and online journals in anthologies in Nepal, the US, the UK, Scotland, Australia, India, and Bangladesh. She lives near Dallas, Texas with her husband and 2 children. Please welcome Anuja.
Namaste. I want to thank the Sundress Academy for this opportunity, and I'm really excited to be here. I'm going to read some poems from my chapbook, Kathmandu. and some other poems. So the first poem is the first poem in this book, When Rajiv Was Blown Up. I wrote this after my first experience with terrorism and violence, when the Prime Minister of India, Rajiv Gandhi, was assassinated. Before her belly would caress and press the bomb in her sari, she gave the man a garland for his neck and bent to touch his feet. It was just the way my father touched the power button on our television's waist as it shook on the wooden dresser. My mother had taught me enough words to understand the man was shocked and killed in the same instant. I'd loved enough to know each night I wanted to sleep with a quiet stomach, watching the faces I've always known. I'd lived long enough to learn of the inventions shared, like the television and bombs, blasting terror in tiny brains. I wrote this next poem after the nightclub shooting in Orlando. I need not complete this poem. In the Milky Way, it would take 100 centuries for one star to get to another. Let's break the words apart. Lend me a hammer. Even the nuclei don't matter. Today, my children hugged the lady who bagged 4 gallons of organic milk and blew her kisses. Beautiful innocence, Kim said, her name tag sending light back to the ceiling. So what if the girls know what love is? Only humans feel embarrassed. Veins betray the emotion on our cheeks. What color is despair? A bad guy. My 6-year-old said about the scattered, shattered glass around the tree, carefully separated from the concrete of the parking lot. In a game of telephone, words altered truth with each whisper in a new ear. Mr. Rogers said, always look for the helper. But the flowers in my heart didn't last a spring. I want to keep my little girls in my arms, but they blossom at the window. This poem that I'm going to read next is for my neighbor. And I think this poem has some kind of supernatural power because every time I read this poem about rain, it rains. And today it rained all day. Summer of endless rain for Peely Tang and Victoria Tang. After my neighbor died in spring, her daughter gave me a key to water plants in the backyard. There, our fences meet. Victoria had thought she would stay longer this time with her old mother and the blossoms. Every sunset, I reach in the envelope for the key. Mrs. Tang leaves her front yard in her walker. The wheels bump on the grass. The metal bars thud in her pale, spotted hands. Mrs. Tang watches my daughters grow in the driveway. I pull one baby from the stroller and set her on a tricycle. Another crawls on our porch and hops on a scooter. Victoria rakes fallen oak leaves like every November and clears the way. When her mother reaches the mailbox, it rains like it rained today. The next poem I'm going to read needs a content warning. It's about a humanitarian who was arrested for sexually abusing children in my home country of Nepal. The title is A Humanitarian Walks into a Village in Nepal. How the old man pulls his trouser higher to hold in the elastic band children's hide and a flattened tower. Behind him, two boys not yet extinguished on the floor. The sun was too dim to cast a shadow when he raised a steady hand to block any light. We knocked on his door, and his spotted skin opened it in Kartike. The man who took laurels from all the land was once a boy who remembered milk in the back of his throat before colostrum-lacquered tongue dried. Once upon a time, only 61 years ago, there lived a baby. His mother gave him lilies. He came in spring. I have another poem about living in Texas and being so close to gun violence. Today they say they pray for El Paso. Tomorrow, caged kids will still sleep under aluminum blankets. Their kin will still weep close to the border. Tomorrow, birds will perch on Walmart roof, songs on their beaks, whitewash on the SUVs. The moon will come through, spill on the bleached parking lot. Tomorrow you cannot stay in El Paso. The white sun will burn holes in Texan clouds. Tomorrow they will pray El Paso. I tend to write a lot of news response poems, and like with most people, my life changed after being a mom. And when I read this news article about a 6-year-old child being thrown into a cold river by her father, I wrote this poem for Phoebe Johnchuk. 6. Things I want to tell Phoebe. And I also want to say that this was the year that Let It Go was very famous. Frozen came out, and my little girl was wandering around in Walmart singing, Let It Go, Let It Go. And that night I wrote this poem. Things I want to tell Phoebe. I hope the bridge stood still and the river waved to welcome you home. I hope the rise felt like swinging. The ripples made room for your landing in the dark water park. I hope you were asleep and your heart was still whole. I hope you dreamed of Elsa and the cold never bothered you. I hope you can hear me. I hope you flew. And this is the last poem I will read for tonight. And this I want to dedicate to my homeland neighboring country of India with the COVID-19 crisis right now. And the poem was inspired by yet another mass shooting in Odessa. It begins with 2 lines in Hindi to a famous saying. In Hindi it is, Jahan na pahuche Ravi, wahan pahuche Kavi, which translates to, where the sun cannot reach, there the poet arrives. Ganesh, you cannot fit in my eyes. Men wheel you first to the prayer hall, center, stage. Drumbeat cannot sit in my heart. We clap in the air and near our knees, circle. Left foot front, back step, right foot front. Dear God, I have chanted your 108 names. Ganesh in Texas, Ganesh in 2019, we pray loud. Ganesh, the baby boy wails, dear son of Shiva. The toddler once sat on the floor when we lift open palms to the ceiling. Ganesh, I didn't fast before I came to see you. Oh, one who absorbs all obstacles. Oh, holy, holy light. My daughters forgot and sat with their backs to you, but they sang your name. Dear God, I'm afraid the key-lit prayers are not enough. Thank you.
Woo! Good job, Nuja. Got emotional.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nuja. That was very moving. Beautiful work. All right, our next reader is Erin Batiste. She's an interdisciplinary poet and author of the chapbook, Glory to All Fleeting Things. In 2021, she is the recipient of PERIPLUS, Jack Straw Writers, and the Dots Between Fellowships, and is a writer in residence at Prairie Ronde and the Helene Wurlitzer Foundation. Her other recent honors include fellowships from Cave Canem, Loaf Writers Conference, Rona Jaffe Foundation, Crosstown Arts, and Callaloo. Batiste is a reader for the Rumpus, and her own Pushcart-nominated poems are anthologized and appear internationally in Michigan Quarterly Review, Puerto del Sol, and Wildness, among other decorated journals. Please welcome Erin Batiste.
Hi, thank you, Stacy, and thank you to Sundress for having me. And thank you to you beautiful squares for coming out to help close out National Poetry Month. So I'm gonna go ahead and read the title poem from my chapbook, and then I'm gonna move into some new work that I've written all this year. Glory to all fleeting things. Glory that my house is not burning. Glory that I survived the two that did. Glory to all the text messages he sent to my disconnected number. They are still unread. To the pastas I learned to make in his absence, to steaming cups of sweet tea, to tea time because my mother's mother raised me to stomach some Southern politenesses. Glory to the craftsmen's real-life dollhouses which flourished my latest neighborhood streets. Glory to the Black and vintage that held me together when I buried Daddy at 20, Granny 10 years after, and everyone in between. To the possibility of extraterrestrials and other softer forms of life. If you are already here, glory to that too. To Paris, which cradled me in lights and pastries after Christopher was gone for good. Glory to all the butter. To little old-fashioned ladies, y'all the real ones, godmamas and play aunties and church sisters who favor your Testament old, velvet red, and 22 Berettas pearl-tipped to match your purse. To the queen palm, her feathery crowns shimmying against the sky. Glory that twins and suicides skipped my fragile genes. Glory that my little sister stayed behind in the desert instead of me. To all the lapels, pleats, pinafores, pin-tucking, pedaled sleeves, silks, and satines for giving me good tailoring and romance. Glory to my womanly body, 4 decades have shaped us magnificent. To tourmaline, citrine, amethyst, selenite, I splay you all naked on the windowsill to recharge with each cycle of the moon. To the moon. Glory to the moon and its cycles, which remind me that nothing, not even my sadness, can last. That's just saying glory in advance to the pandemic and all of this year. Woo, it's just been about 100 years, right? So this is all new work that I'm gonna move into. I'm gonna start with a sadder piece. My father's 20th year death anniversary was this year, and his heart stopped and he died on Valentine's Day. And there was no, I went through a personal pandemic and there was no one and no language and no conversation or compassion anyway. Now there are these things, I think, which is necessary for us to live as humans in what's left of the world. That's enough of my spiel. No trees I could name, dedicated to my father. Were there blackberry trees on the ride to the cemetery where they lowered my father into his grave? Would my sister clutching her thrift store purse? Would my mother on her fourth husband? Would either have managed to look up, have known what to look for, have considered wintertime flowers or fruit wearing a purpled hue of death? Did they leave a mark on that day the way they stain my memory now? 15 years later, there were no trees I could name. My cousin makes the same drive, this time me, strange and silent in a car. I am fresh off another airplane, and as he detours exiting the familiar freeway, teases, let's make a game of finding my father's headstone. We never do. My cousin rattles on as the city falls all around me. I think of him alone, there in that watery coffin. Think of my daddy who only wanted daughters, more road trips and Disneyland and sunshine. Think how I am his première fille. Think how he proudly picked my first and middle names. Think how I have seen Seattle several times now, how so many Valentine's days have passed, and I am too ashamed to ask anyone where he rests. Later that trip, I pile with my uncle's family into the same sedan to cremate the same cousin's grandmother. I do not recognize any leaves or promises of blooming. By the time we arrive, she is already in a box, her small body coupled with her favorite life-size doll. Closed, it looks like a cardboard wardrobe meant for hanging and moving clothes. The young morticianist notices our surprise, tells us how this is her dream job, how she decided to deliver grief when she was a girl. I had shown up for the grandmother and her doll, but she is not my blood, has not taught me how to jump rope, never repaired my scraped knees, on no occasion baked cookies or my birthday carrot cake. Still, I wonder if they have bothered to dress her. Wonder, has anyone brushed or braided her lacy white hair? Remember the grandmother's face, sunflowered, as she described how the wind swung my father's wool blazer. She had prayed psalms for a clean heart. Remember how much her daughter resented that doll, hated all her mother's dainty painted daughters sitting on decorative chairs in their Lake Washington house. Wonder, is my aunt hiding a smirk while the flames join plastic and flesh together, the only sound masking the slow murmur of rain? We're going to switch gears now. This is dedicated to my friend Katie Willingham, who is on this video. We are accidentally started co-writing a chapbook together about friendship and writing prompts. We've conceptualized the same prompts and we write to them. And we're both very different writers, so we come up with very different poems, which has been incredible. This one was a take on Write a List of Your Flaws, but Katie came up with the idea to write all of the bad notes from writing workshops. So dedicated to Katie, but also Sunday Workshop, which was this group of dysfunctional people that I started this workshop and was in for a long time, longer than I should have been. And it's an ABCDarian, meaning it's in a form from A to Z. So each line starts with the letter of the alphabet in alphabetical order. Notes from workshop, an ABCDarian. Because this poem is aggressive and angry, always aflame at some loss or another. Because this poem is bewildering, even to witches. Because this poem is a cyclone of syllables, impossible for most mouths to pronounce. Because this poem is downpour of words, darkening and depressing the white space beneath it. demands readers show up. Because this poem is eccentric with its loud flowering prints and rising signs, embarrassing, episode too elegiac. Because this poem is fatalistic. It is crying over someone dying, fragile, pharaoh, a funeral, a failure. Because this poem is gardenless, like the poet, it refuses to cultivate, prune, or decorate even. Because this poem is heartbroken, so many Christophers have exited without looking back, hateful now. Because this poem is immature, it names names and carries its childhood around like a ratty sweater. Because this poem is juvenile, it seems to want to indict the mother. Because this poem is kitschy, chock full of deranged dolls and plastic cactuses and cartoon versions of High Noon. Because this poem is lonesome. All these poems are lonesome. Because this poem is melodramatic, it plays out and replays the most mundane everydayness. Because this poem is not a poem, the workshop silently turns its pages over and moves on. Because this poem is obsessive, it fills itself with lists and dates like adolescent diary entries, over emotional. Because this poem is privileged, the poet too, its pretentiousness is already expected, a petty pity parade. Because this poem is questionable, it assumes all manner of vulgar margins and quirky shapes. Because this poem is resentful and repetitive, its refrain eventually becomes a weapon. Because this poem is selfish, it does not consider outside its own small, sad atmosphere. Because this poem is tired, talks only of old hauntings. Because this poem is undisciplined, it does not write its morning pages and is sluggish to revise. Because this poem is violent, the white woman who hangs herself in it takes up too much attention. Because this poem is weird, wild daughter nobody wished for, it tumbleweeds from town to town. Because this poem is xerophytic, it does not require your watery platitudes, nor does it need to earn its ending. Because this poem is yelling, and if not, the next poem will. Its meaning may be missed entirely. Because this poem is zealous over extraterrestrials and laden with conspiracy, this poet should seek a professional soon.
Come on with it.
Thank you for listening. I have one more for y'all, and I'll show you guys the trick at the end. Reincarnation. Before everything was swept into one relentless spring, dueling for rolls of bounty in big box aisles, fearing death, overhearing a parking lot sneeze, trembling over headlines, hospitalizations, surges in new cases, new deaths, there was this. We were careless in cafes and sidewalks and mourning, palms all gripping the same slick express train pillars, the other steadying the greased pages of a used book. More than once, even I confessed to touching the lid of my lavender latte, unwashed fingertips sweaty with the city and anticipation. So freely we gathered into bars, bookstores, and brunches just to listen to somebody else belt out all their private disappointment while we poured our work weeks over chocolate-flavored happy hour specials and sushi. We held each other's puffer coats and swampy scarves and bathroom lines, not pressed to distinguish if the stranger's face there beside us was flushed with fever or shyness. On good days, we locked eyes with every commuter, the escalator opposite ours, and sometimes even bared our teeth into some half-hearted attempt at connection. There was connection. Still, we flaked on birthdays, started to concoct excuses to get out of Christmas this year at the first hint of 3-day beach weekends, sun timely and reliably bright back then. Decades of we promise the next holiday lies stretch like miles. How could we have known that history was upon us, that history is as it was always, alive and ravenous and doggedly plotting itself out? That we would be the ones whatever ones came afterwards would read about, would sneer or recoil at our collective horrors and toilet paper hoards, at the puzzling ways we'd made the plague fashion, wrung our sanitized hands awash in worry at the news and news of news. How frail our loneliness. We hesitated, cautiously, 6 feet apart, no longer staring into nor desiring eyes of other covered faces. How we would long for salty potato salad and polite weather talk and window shopping and wandering at festivals seeking solstice and geopendants declared non-essential now. How before we'd spend every 5-day cycle yearning to be returned to our small worlds and cramped apartments until we became reduced to them. Until all we had left was our shared universes online, one-dimensional as far as we could tell. Would we crowd together, reincarnated here into brilliant millions of tiny pixelated frames? Thank you for listening. And it's in a grid like y'all. It's in a grid. It's in a Zoom box. Thank you for listening.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you so much. Okay. Our final reader this evening is Isaac Pickell. He's a passing poet and PhD student at Wayne State University in Detroit, where he studies the borderlands of Blackness and Black literature. His work is most recently featured in Black Warrior Review, Crazyhorse, Fence, Puerto del Sol, and Sixth Finch, and his chapbook, Everything Saved Will Be Last, is forthcoming from Black Lawrence Press. Isaac is the founding editor of the Woodward Review, a journal of call and response from Wayne State University. Please welcome Isaac Pickell.
Thank you so much, Stacy, and echoing what everyone else has said, thank you to SAFTA for having us here and for people coming out, and for the weather being nice enough for me to be able to do poetry reading and hope that the birds behind me and the children, the house next door aren't too noisy and you guys can hear me just fine. I am mostly reading today from my new chapbook. I had a reading a couple weeks ago with a whole bunch of new poems written in the COVID year, and I just don't think I have the spirit for them today. So I am reading mostly from the chapbook, which aren't necessarily happier, but they are different. The poems mostly concern my experience or generational experience of passing as white. My mom is Black, I'm mixed, but I came out this way, and sort of engaging through poetry with what that does to my experience in the world, and how I experience other people. So I'm going to just start reading, and I'll break a little bit between poems, but thank you guys for being here. My friend Coda never talks about New Orleans. It's best to say her story began under plastic glow-in-the-dark stars making constellations along old water creases where the glue that holds your home together once strained but didn't buckle. It's best not to say the neighborhood that didn't used to be underwater disintegrated into so many paper towns. It's best to explain how the children are gone, not gone, but made into doughy pulp, how recycled paper used to be a novelty luxury, how the earth didn't fall out from under her, but the other way around, how paint is just pretty glue. Imbrute. I knew I was Black when I was 7 years old, and only knew because before 7 I had known I was white. You are still fitting in the spaces you are and are not allowed, and your mother, she is sadder than mine. We are both pigeonholes, written over the top of historical bodies, excesses washing out our pigment and other bruises I've known. I've been good. Why do I need to remember I've been black? I could run from tomorrow, but we are more than mere endurance. A controlled insertion of bodies seamlessly inserted into this otherwise you-less life, where days seem to end as they began, entirely imaginary, making them not any less real, just gently waiting, bright and lucent as you always imagined I could be. On things you ought to take sitting down. They tell us to just hang in there, and even though we're all born with a handle, we are not all born with a string. All right, this one is a little bit longer than the rest, so I will go on. It's called The Stories That Aren't Told. It's in 3 parts. So get some water. A psalm. She said, there's nothing about us without us. Dissolution as in stagnation, intransigence in black life, pure force undiluted by reparation, and unfamilial beauty indebted to pale reflections whose possibility for neutral remains undiagnosed. It's too easy to say white is neutral. Splintered identities and emergent modes redefining oppression as a poetry prompt. Free use and always fair trade, leaving only the purposeful discontents disconnected. I am not neutral. The shape of the back of my head is not neutral. The ways mother names each of her grandparents in the blurred quadrants where my hair grows against its best interests are not neutral. Questioning when I should apply what product, blackness applied to that part behind your clicks. Isn't that funny? I don't see a lot of regular people with hair like that and other forms of mimicry. Can caricature resist the smooth charcoal scratches darkening our own outlines as pre-recorded bodies painted by expensive pencils, rosying the cheeks of toy soldiers like mimicry? Our pre-recorded bodies. Mimicry are masks. Mimicry is pressed onto postcards and offered free for museum opening weekends. Mimicry is now available for purchase. Mimicry is silhouettes of enslaved people with intimate transatlantic travel plans, and mimicry dreams of the rising white pillar of Washington's promise he never really made, and you can't help but see when leaving the gift shop where you're told all proceeds contribute to curating the archives are mimicry. Assumptions my body will be curated, mocking blank blue screens after presentation endings. Read close, every white text about black text feels guilty for the open ocean, and my white texts over my black text until the water remembers it is blue only for recreation. The earliest paintings, how poorly they captured live bodies projected onto pre-recorded bodies in the complexions of masks I wear. What does my body feel when it touches skin? Outrageously magical things happen when you play around without the semblance of a symbol. Lesser homilies. Discourse. The provenance of whiteness deserves more working through, demands reprocessing language past thought into instinct, into the common ideological heritages of man, into every good philosopher must once contend with Kant, into the Theological roots of hermeneutics demand we recall the sacred responsibility unto King Kunta with a black Jesus hanging in his hut, framed with the switches that grandmother found behind the great house into the other should be capitalized. Like every retelling of Icarus is performed as homage to ancestors drowning, unable to afford a plane ticket. But Icarus need not be a cautionary tale. Learning to read demands we draw very close to its light. Eyes and skin acclimate to abduction. All our God's children can have wings. In youth's speculative poetics, line breaks don't fall into the sea, but in my hands, what become of the oldest myths? Can they stack or pool or bend? Are they passed between bodies, slip through fingers, soothe in slippage, break into creases, accelerate into opacity, then divination, and the inevitable of warping what's left in common is we are stoic, not silenced. We are laying lucidity to rest. We are buying stock in the intractable other. Printed in the same weight and shade as the half-height walls that kept us apart, and the rounded hall, smooth and human and meant for a return, voyage we weren't offered as our own reproductions were, not built for, as enough of us drown, becoming nothing but pronouns. Our bodies have always been matchsticks. I forget or never knew how long and stretched and paper thin it gets when floating on a sea. That one's hard. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Okay, I have just a couple of more. My friend says, but the world is still burning. Recast rope and oven as sooty brick and concrete and tar, or at least give tar a new role, or at least give brick a new role, or at least make concrete a home and not a cell, or at least summon rage as density, not darkness, as thunder and not lightning, as that which comes second, as that which lets you know it's coming, counting on 1 1,000s, 2 1,000s, 3 and it's beaten. The storm floating away and passing as we're here and drawing off at home against the concrete. Pick the splinters out from history and pile them crossways into a cabin. Enough splinters until they write their own shelter. Asylum, then refuge. Movement, then home, where brother is the day I can't forget. We cannot weep together. The idea no one thought of, where all we have is everything to lose by the same rules as everyone else. Define these days of change within these days of change. In a word, do not speak them with silence. Despite what you heard, I am not made of brick, and few closures are complete as the narrative ones. So inside this therapy of the past tense, where palms scatter, where faces are stored, in a vision or someone to believe it, folded between shoulders and rib or ruffled beneath some prettier thing like tendrils or sunset, where there is no closer that's not hurting and whirling and waltzing to the stupid music we name the anxiety of just being some way to die. How many stars must we possess before we are mistaken for light or a clear sky full of just your kind of birds drawn with just one line? What words won't put me in the ground? If black were human, it would be already. If you were breathing, you would be ready for all their bark. If opinions were just like assholes after all, and not the trap doors into our dying box. If brown were human, it would already be clear there was not enough for everyone, and that not enough was the problem, and not all of us. Scared white as human after being reminded, if human were enough, it would be already. And then my final poem. Thank you all again for coming. I know I'm the last reader, so I will finish it off right here. It really has been marvelous. Writing yourself whole. Let your body consume metaphor like everyone has a body, like you have had eyes for too long to learn new tricks. Change the mirror instead. If you find somebody missing, do not report it to the authorities. Call the number at your own perforated edges, stapled to trees and signposts. Do not present a problem without a solution because you will get used to it. Remember, there is actually no difference between good and bad things. It is impossible to remember the others as young men. Let your body age with their memory, and time will take shape painlessly about you, no matter how closely you watch the pot. Accept the diagnosis that makes none of this your fault. Accept someone else's lies as mantra. Gratitude and complaint are not mutually exclusive. Hold yourself closer to the vest. Do not conflate skin cells with history, politics, and other sciences, pretending I am unimportant. Recite, no ideas but in things, no mountains but from molehills. And that's all I got. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Isaac. Fantastic work. Everybody's tonight is just great. So excited. So we have a few more minutes. If anybody has any questions for our readers, now is the time to ask. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away. Anybody, don't be shy. Or readers, if you have any questions for each other, chime in.
I just want to say I was blown away by the poems. I really enjoyed this evening.
Absolutely.
I actually have a question for, is it Erin or S. Erin?
S. Erin.
S. Erin. And you obviously read a lot of new pieces that were kind of actively moved by the last year. And I was wondering how, and this is a technical question, but how sort of the working through and the editing and revising and the sort of making kin from drafts has been working for you as things keep happening so much all of the time. Have you felt like the poems never can be finished because there's always something new?
I mean, I feel like for these particular poems, I do 30 to 50 drafts per poem. So I'm reworking them pretty hard, and all three of those are around 20-ish drafts. So they might, see some tinkering in things, but it's very strange in the way that time has become secular. Well, it always was. Because like my father has died every Valentine's Day for me. But it took 20 years to write that piece. But then the pandemic piece obviously is like a more timely thing that's still evolving. People are acting like, wow, there's a vaccine, and they're kind of just out footloose and fancy free. So I think the short answer is that for those poems, I put a pin in them. For the ongoing assassinations by the states, for the ongoing terrorism against Black America, then I have to unfortunately keep writing those that work. That work is continuing. The pandemic is continuing, but I feel like that part of the pandemic is over, where people were like hoarding toilet paper and staying in their house and kind of having to figure it out. So, I mean, there comes a point, especially with confessional poetry, where you have to put a pin in that poem and in that moment. And then who knows, maybe I'm going to have to write another pandemic poem at this time next year. I hope not, but that's the short answer. You put a pin in it, you revise it. And a lot of my poems are dealing with kind of moments anyway, and all fleeting and all very ethereal, if that makes sense. Did I answer the question? And thank you to you both. Your poems were just incredible. Yeah, it's been a great evening.
Thank you, Erin and Anuja. That was great.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and wrap up. I'd like to remind you all to, don't forget, donate to our April community partner, Girl Talk. The link is in the chat there. And I want to invite you to join us on Wednesday, May 12th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time for a workshop on business management tools that will be led by Danielle Hansen. She's a former marketing executive at AT&T and a member of the Southeast Atlanta Lady Mob networking group for small business owners. Writers and artists can benefit from using common tools from the business world to focus their creative work, plan their time, increase their impact on the marketplace, in other words, readers, and celebrate their achievements. So don't miss that. You can find details in our Facebook page. We have an event page for that. And we also look forward to seeing you back here on Zoom on Wednesday, May 26th for another installment of our reading series. That'll be again at 7 to 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And our readers will be Ashley Nguanta, Marcella Sulak, and Billy R. Tedros. And again, we have a Facebook event for that. All that info is in the chat, so please check that out. And we hope to see you again soon. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for our wonderful readers for sharing their work. And thank all of our audience members for supporting the arts today and every day.